Although the Warden King's face showed none of his rage, his body displayed signs of the violence it wished to inflict. Rising slowly from his chair, his hands flexing as if searching for a weapon, he walked slowly towards the tent's only other occupant, his advisor, the Rune Lord Val. Stopping a mere foot away from Val, Warden King Thelbeck Boulderthane simply stood, his breathing measured and his eyes boring into the other Doradin, standing silently for an uncomfortable minute before he finally spoke. "What did you say?" Thelbeck said, his voice itself seeming to promise pain. To his credit, Val did not flinch. As a Rune Lord, he was expected to speak his mind, even if it might bring the wrath of an angry king, or in this case, a grieving father. "I said you are being a fool," Val stated, without a hint of the usual respect in his voice. "Leading your army through these mountain ranges has effectively gifted the Skaven free reign on our forces. Their attacks are whittling us down to nothing, as they strike and skitter away over and over again. We need to return to our hold. Do you remember why we do this?" Thelbeck bellowed, his voice far higher than would be considered proper. A voice that several of his hammerer guards outside his tent were trying their best to ignore. "They dug into our homes and slaughtered our kin, Val, taking their bodies so that we couldn't even bury them in the mountain. They killed my son." "They've killed many sons," Val said bluntly, "and they will kill many more the longer we chase the Skaven's tails. I don't deny there is a grudge that must be paid. But my king, it is up to you to determine the right time for them to pay it. Tell me, is it your crown telling you to chase the Skaven now, or your grief?" Every emotion within Thelbeck wished for him to call Val a coward, to scream and rage at him for not wanting justice to be done. But the other part of him, the part that has ruled his hold for almost a century, simply spoke. It spoke of a duty to his people, a duty that far outweighed his own pain. Taking several deep breaths, Thelbeck's rage slowly began to lessen, his mind clearing for the first time in what felt like weeks. Taking one final long breath, he was about to speak his new orders to his old friend, before the sound of the tent's flap opening drew both their attentions. Walking in was a dwarven warrior, his armor marking him as one of the soldiers tasked with guarding the passes leading towards their camp. In his hands he had a large bronze box, its outer covering scratched by what might have been knives or claws. "My lord king," the warrior spoke, quickly nodding in respect. "A single Skaven came charging the line a little while ago. He was killed by a quarreler before he could get close, and a single unit was sent to investigate. All they found on it was this box. We opened it and—" The warrior trailed off, as if unable to continue. Val walked over to the Doradin and opened the lid of the box he was carrying. One look at its contents made his blood run cold, and made him realize that any chance of convincing his king was now over. "What's in the box?" Thelbeck demanded, slowly approaching the two Doradin, his voice a mixture of command and apprehension. Val slowly turned, allowing his king to see the box's contents. A single Doradin head. The head of his late son. The Doradin marched. Val had advised against it, but one look from Thelbeck was all it took for the Rune Lord to realize that no words would be heeded. Thelbeck's rage was in control now, and he would march his forces to exhaustion until he got the revenge he believed he deserved. They continued down a wide valley in between two sloping mountains, their relentless movement causing an occasional pebble or small boulder to tumble down the sides towards them. Thelbeck led near the front with his army, surrounded by his hammerer guards. He spent his time imagining the Skaven heads he would remove with his axe. His images of revenge were cut short when the army stopped. A quick message from a nearby scout telling him that the path ahead was blocked by several large boulders. Blinded by rage as he was, Thelbeck still recognized an ambush when he saw one. Ordering his forces into a defensive square, he waited gladly for the chance to kill. He did not need to wait long. They first heard the chittering, the sound of excited ratmen echoing across the valley floor. This was quickly followed by the sight of furry Skaven bodies, Skaven by the hundreds, if not the thousands, overlooking them from the mountaintops above. As the number of Skaven increased, outnumbering his own forces by at least 10 times, Thelbic finally realized the depths of his mistake. Thelbic looked hopefully at Val, but his advisor simply shook his head and raised his hammer, readying for the battle to come. Soon a horn blasted through the valley, and the Skaven charged down the mountain walls, screaming in both excitement and fear. As they ran, Thelbic's thunderers and quarrelers unleashed volleys of fire into the oncoming horde. They might as well have been shooting into an ocean wave. Each killed Skaven subsumed into the crashing tide of warm bodies. Before long, the Skaven were upon them, waves upon waves of ratmen crowding around his forces. Despite the numbers, the Duerden held, their shield wall more than a match for the rats with rusted metal swords and leathers that barely fit their meager forms. For a brief moment, Thelbic thought they may succeed, that they might win the day and finally kill these Skaven once and for all. That hope was dashed when the storm vermin arrived. Attacking from within the horde of lesser rats, they struck at a group of Duerden whose formation had begun to waver, killing them and allowing a hole for the rest of the Skaven to pour through. Before long they were overrun, scenes of violent death surrounding them. The worst was Val. Thelbic saw his advisor and oldest friend attempt to reach his king, only to be skewered from behind by a storm vermin's halberd, then quickly ripped apart by the knives and claws of smaller Skaven. Thelbic kept fighting, his axe killing scores of Skaven, until the haft of a storm vermin's halberd struck him in the head. Thelbic awoke to the overwhelming sound of chittering. Opening his eyes, he looked around to see he was in the middle of a circle of Skaven, all far enough to be just out of reach of his axe, which, for some odd reason, they had allowed him to keep. The Skaven's chittering continued for a few more seconds until a sharp yell silenced them. Silence! A gap opened within the circle of furry flesh, and walking forward strode a single Skaven. Slightly bigger than a storm vermin, his manner made it obvious he was the warlord of this horde of monsters. Thelbic slowly stood up. Grasping his weapon, he made ready to finally meet his ancestors and his son, hoping to inflict at least one blow before the Skaven ripped him apart. The Skaven warlord stood in silence. Although no expert on Skaven expressions, Thelbic couldn't help but feel he was being examined, like the Skaven had found a new toy and wished to know how it worked. This continued for several irritating seconds before Thelbic decided to speak. "Come fight me, you coward! Fight me, you pathetic rat filth!" Thelbic yelled, both trying to goad the Skaven and airing out his own frustration. The Skaven didn't react, its face still showing the same curious expression for a little while longer, before turning its twisted Skaven head to the side and slowly smiling. Lowering its own weapon, it leaned forward slightly and simply said, "No." With that, it turned around and walked away, followed silently by his storm vermin bodyguard. Thelbic raged, trying his best to strike any nearby Skaven that were in his way. A few lucky strikes were able to kill some pathetic smaller rats, but the rest simply scattered, quickly going beyond the reach of Thelbic's axe. Soon, all that was left was one Duerden and the scattered pieces of his army, an army that now consisted of defiled corpses picked clean of armor and weapons, an army that he knew he had led to its death. Thelbic dropped to his knees and screamed at himself, at the Skaven, and anyone who would listen. It was a scream that only came from the shattering of one's mind, from a slide into madness. Further ahead, Skaven warlord Krauk Mournthorn heard the screams of a broken man, and smiled. A force beyond number, a deadly vermin horde, an unstoppable tide of ruinous death. These are the warriors of the Skaven race. But you will find no ancient traditions or practiced tactics within this army. This is an army of numbers, using their forces like disposable chaff to achieve victory, always knowing there are more bodies to replace them in the disgusting birthing pits of their home. The lowest of the low are the clan rats. Born to die, they are the main bulk of clan Verminus forces. Used to swamp the enemy, they take the bulk of enemy fire, whittling them down before their betters come to strike the final blow. On occasion, those in command will deign to assign one of these clan rats to the role of clan leader for a small grouping of clan rats. Although whether this is due to any real talent on the part of that particular Skaven, or simply the whim of a warlord. One can never truly know. While the clan rats are made to die, the storm vermin are made to fight, destined to battle the foes of the Skaven race, or if they are shown to be especially skillful, guard the lives of Skaven elites. The head of a particular storm vermin unit is called a Fang leader. The position shows that he is the most skilled and devious of his peers. This can be quite the boon, but also quite the danger, for it is not uncommon for a Fang leader to try to usurp his warlord if the opportunity presents itself. He must convince the warlord of his loyalty at every opportunity, to prevent the warlord from removing a potential rival, an act that will continue until the warlord shows the first sign of weakness. The head of a horde, and the most ruthless of the Skaven, the warlords of Clan Verminus unleash their armies on their enemies with but a wave of their claws, willing to see hundreds or thousands of their fellows die to ensure a victory. To Skaven warlords, words like honor are idiotic concepts from inferior races. Why risk your own life in a fair battle, when you can simply stab your enemy in the back when he is distracted by your minions? To a Skaven warlord, a victory is worth any cost, as long as he is around to see it. When a truly dangerous enemy appears, the Verminlord Warburgers make themselves known, representing the martial might of the Great Horned Rat. They wield doomglaives and punch daggers to slaughter the enemy. Not only that, but their very presence unleashes a death frenzy upon nearby Skaven, making even the weakest clan rat into a frothing berserker, trying to take down as many enemies as possible before it dies a most likely horrible death. To be a Skaven of Clan Verminus, to be part of an unstoppable horde, to drown your enemies in bodies until all that is left of them is shattered spirits and broken bodies. Hey guys, this is Arvandus, and I want to say I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like these short stories / descriptions of various races in Age of Sigmar, please like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll keep doing it. Not only Age of Sigmar, perhaps other games that I have interest in. Anyway, thanks for listening, and see you next time.